Imagine you just got a raise, a big one, and without really thinking about it, you mention it to a coworker at lunch, just casually. Yeah, they bumped me up to 90,000. You're excited. It feels good. You worked hard for it. But then, something shifts. Almost immediately, you start noticing things. The coworker stops offering to split bills evenly. A family member suddenly needs a loan. A friend who never cared about money starts asking you what you're investing in. And your landlord? He somehow finds out and raises your rent at renewal. Market rates, he says, but you know better. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The moment people know how much you have, you stop being a person to them. You become a number, and that number changes how every single person around you treats you. Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest men alive, understood this decades ago, and he built a philosophy around it. Not out of arrogance, not out of shame, but because he understood something most of us never learn. Revealing your net worth is one of the most financially dangerous things you can do. Today, we're going to break down exactly why. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at financial conversations the same way again.
We live in an era that celebrates financial transparency. Influencers post their income reports, podcasters brag about their portfolio returns. TikTok is full of people showing their bank accounts and saying, "I hit 6 figures," like it's a personality trait. And on the surface, that feels inspiring, right? Like, if they can do it, so can I. That's the idea. And there's something genuinely motivating about it. But here's what's happening underneath all that sharing. Every single person who sees that number, whether it's your salary, your savings, or your net worth, instantly recalibrates their relationship with you based on what they see. It's not conscious, it's automatic, it's psychology. We're wired to assess resources, who has more, who has less, and what that means for us. Think about it. Have you ever found out a friend earns significantly more than you? Or less? Did it change anything? Even a little? Be honest. Maybe you felt a small flicker of envy, or maybe you started feeling slightly superior, or maybe you started wondering why you're splitting the bill 50-50 when they make twice what you do. That's the audit trap. The moment you reveal a number, everyone around you starts running calculations in their head, and those calculations almost never work in your favor. The common belief is that being open about money is healthy, that transparency builds trust. And sure, in some contexts, that's true, but there's a massive difference between being honest about your values and broadcasting your balance sheet to the world. Warren Buffett lived in the same modest Omaha house he bought in 1958. He drove himself around. He ate at McDonald's. He didn't walk around announcing he was worth $50 billion. And that was a deliberate strategy, not modesty for the sake of it. Strategy.
Let's break down the actual mechanics of why revealing your net worth creates problems. And I want to go through this slowly because each layer matters. The first layer is what we can call the target effect. When people know you have money, you become a target, not always in a sinister way. Sometimes it's completely unconscious. A family member hits a rough patch and thinks, well, they can afford to help. A friend needs someone to co-sign a loan and figures you're the safe bet. A business partner pitches you an idea that conveniently needs your capital. A charity follows up more aggressively because your donation history signals what you're worth. None of these people are necessarily bad people. They're just running the calculation. You have the resource, they need it. The math is simple to them. But here's the problem. Every one of those situations puts you in a socially impossible position. Say yes, and you've set a precedent. Say no, and suddenly you're the rich person who doesn't help. Either way, you lose. The second layer is what psychologists call the expectation ratchet. Once people know your financial position, their expectations of you ratchet up, and ratchets only move in one direction. They don't go back. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say you earn $60,000 a year and your friend knows that. You always split bills, no issues. Now your income jumps to $150,000. If your friend finds out, the mental math changes instantly. Splitting the bill starts to feel unfair to them. Not because they're a bad friend, but because the numbers are different now, and the brain naturally recalibrates fairness around those numbers. You haven't changed, your friendship hasn't changed, but the expectation has, and that expectation gap creates resentment on one side or financial drain on the other. The third layer is the negotiation disadvantage. This one is massive, and almost nobody talks about it. When the other party in any negotiation knows your financial position, you lose leverage. Period. Think about buying a car. If the salesperson knows exactly what you earn, they know your ceiling. They know how hard they can push. They know what financing terms will sound reasonable to you. Your financial transparency just became their negotiation weapon. Same thing applies to salary negotiations. If a potential employer knows you're currently earning $40,000, they'll offer you $42,000 and call it a win. They didn't need to offer you $60,000. Why would they? They already know your floor. Or think about business deals. If your supplier knows your margins are healthy and your company is thriving, they have no urgency to give you a better price. They know you can afford the current one. Buffett understood this deeply. He's talked about the importance of maintaining information asymmetry in business dealings. When you know more than the other side knows about you, you hold the power. The moment that flips, the power goes with it. The fourth layer is what I call the lifestyle inflation trap, but with a social twist. When people know you have money, they expect you to spend like it. If you drive a beat-up sedan when everyone knows you're worth $2 million, you start getting comments. Why are you so cheap? You can afford better than that. And slowly, social pressure starts pushing you towards spending that reflects your known wealth rather than your actual financial goals. This is exactly the opposite of what builds long-term wealth. Real wealth is built by spending significantly less than you earn over long periods. But social visibility of your net worth creates pressure to spend in ways that signal your status to others, which quietly erodes the very wealth they think you have. Buffett famously resisted this. The man ate the same breakfast for decades, roughly $3.17 from McDonald's, not because he couldn't afford a Michelin star restaurant, but because he wasn't spending to perform wealth for an audience. He was accumulating to build it.
Here's where we get into the psychology that sits underneath all of this. And this is the part I find genuinely fascinating. There's a concept in behavioral economics called social comparison theory. The idea is that humans instinctively measure their own worth by comparing themselves to the people around them. It's hardwired into us from an evolutionary standpoint. Who has more food? Who has more status? Who has more security? These comparisons kept us alive in tribal environments. But in a modern financial context, it creates a problem. Because the moment you reveal your net worth, you don't just invite comparison, you become the reference point. And depending on where others land relative to you, the emotional consequences ripple through every interaction you have with them. People who have less than you may feel inadequate without ever saying so, and that shame often converts to resentment. Not at their own circumstances, but at you for being the reminder of the gap. People who have more than you may unconsciously start treating you differently, dismissing your opinions, assuming you don't understand their financial world, leaving you out of conversations. And here's the cruel irony. Neither group is necessarily being malicious. This is just how comparison works. It distorts the relationship regardless of anyone's intentions. Now here's the really interesting part. Buffett talks about something called the inner scorecard versus the outer scorecard. He says the key question you have to ask yourself is, are you living by your own standards or by what others think of you? Most people operate on the outer scorecard without realizing it. They buy things to impress people they barely like. They share financial wins because they want external validation. They reveal their net worth because it feels good to be seen as successful. Buffett operated on the inner scorecard. His measures of success were internal. Was he doing work he found meaningful? Was he learning? Was he compounding? What the world thought of his house, his car, or his lunch order was irrelevant because he wasn't playing the game of impression management, he was playing the game of actual wealth building. And here's what most people miss. Those two games have very different rules. The impression management game requires you to constantly spend, signal, and broadcast. The wealth building game requires you to be quiet, patient, and strategic. You cannot win both at the same time. There's a reason the wealthiest people you've never heard of are wealthier than the ones you have. Invisibility is a wealth strategy.
So what do you actually do with this? Let's make it concrete. First, understand the difference between financial privacy and financial shame. Privacy is a strategy. Shame is an emotion. You don't need to be ashamed of what you have or don't have. You just don't need to broadcast it. There's a big difference. Keeping your numbers to yourself isn't dishonesty, it's protection. Second, be especially careful in 3 specific contexts: family, the workplace, and social media. Family is where money conversations get the most emotionally loaded. Everyone has an opinion about what you should do with your money. Everyone has a need that becomes suddenly more urgent when they know you have resources. Keeping financial specifics vague with family isn't cold, it's sane. You can be generous without giving people a spreadsheet of your assets. The workplace is a negotiation environment at all times. Your salary, your savings rate, your side income, none of this needs to be public knowledge among colleagues. The research on salary transparency is nuanced. In some structured environments, it helps reduce inequality. But in most everyday workplaces, the person who knows everyone's number holds all the power, and that's rarely you. Social media is the most obvious one. There is no financial upside to posting your portfolio returns, your income milestones, or your net worth publicly. The only return is social validation, and social validation has a terrible ROI when measured against the risks: attracting scammers, creating resentment among your real-life network, and building a public profile that becomes a liability. Third, learn the art of financial deflection. When someone asks you directly about money, and they will, you don't need to lie. You just need a toolkit of non-answers that feel like answers. Things like, "I'm doing all right, focusing on the long game," or "I don't really track it that way," or simply, "I keep financial stuff pretty private." Said warmly, with a smile, most people will move on, and the ones who don't, that tells you something important about them. Fourth, separate your identity from your number. This is the deepest one. If your self-worth is tied to your net worth, you'll constantly want to share it, because sharing it feels like being seen. But your value as a human being has nothing to do with how many zeros are in your bank account. The sooner you internalize that, the freer you are. And freedom from that psychological need means you can make financial decisions based on logic, not ego. And fifth, think about information asymmetry as a long-term advantage. In every negotiation, whether it's a salary, a business deal, a property purchase, or a service contract, the side with more information about the other side wins. Your job is to always know more about them than you know about you. Revealing your financial position voluntarily gives away your most powerful card before the game even starts. Here's the thought I want to leave you with. There's a quote often attributed to various sources that says, "The first rule of wealth is that you don't talk about wealth." Now that might sound cynical, like some secret society thing, but it's actually just the natural conclusion of understanding how human psychology interacts with money. We live in a world that rewards performance, that celebrates visible success, that makes you feel like if you're not sharing your wins, you're somehow not winning. But the people who are genuinely, quietly, structurally wealthy, the ones with real financial security that doesn't evaporate in a market downturn, most of them are people you've never heard of because they understood that the audience doesn't build the wealth, the discipline does. Buffett didn't become the greatest investor of all time because he was the loudest in the room. He became the greatest investor of all time because he was playing a different game entirely. Patient, private, compounding, year after year, decade after decade, while the world watched other people perform success, he was quietly building it. The audit trap isn't just about people targeting your money, It's about the slow, invisible tax that comes from letting the world's expectations shape your financial decisions. Every time you make a choice based on what people will think of your money rather than what actually serves your financial future, you're paying that tax. So the next time someone asks what you're worth, and trust me, they will, remember, you don't owe anyone a number. Your net worth is yours. Protect it, not just from people who might take it, but from the social pressures that will slowly spend it for you. If this video made you think differently about money and how you talk about it, drop a comment below with one financial conversation you've had that you wish you'd handled differently. I read every single one. And if you're new here, we talk about money psychology, wealth building, and real financial thinking every single week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Stay smart, stay quiet, and keep building.